Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Doctors In podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Nadia Saba, and this is our special series, What Plants Crave. I'm talking to growers and scientists about the plants they grow in greenhouses and indoor farms on this special series. My guest today is Moein Moosavi, who is a PhD student in the Horticultural Sciences Department at North Carolina State University. And he's working in the Controlled Environment Agriculture Lab under Dr. Ricardo Hernandez. Moein started working in Controlled Environment Ag in 2016 at the University of Tehran, focusing on plant-light interactions in grafted vegetables. For his PhD research currently, he has continued his research on light plant interactions, but with a totally different crop, strawberries. His research is part of a larger USDA-funded consolidated agriculture project focused on strawberry precision indoor production, otherwise known as PIP. The project is supporting researchers from all over the US in their quest to unravel the mysteries of propagating and producing high yielding and high quality strawberries using controlled environment agriculture. Moein, it's so great to have you on the What Plants Crave podcast. I'm super excited to talk about strawberries and the research you've been conducting to understand how their growth and development are affected by light. So thank you and welcome.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I'm so happy to be here and to talk to you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. So I want to start with the question, why are strawberries becoming such a hot crop in the world of controlled environment agriculture?
So I guess mostly it's because of their high market value compared to other CEA crops, compared to leafy greens, lettuce. And also, we have some pesticide and chemical usage issues in open fields sometimes. So it's a good idea to produce them indoors in like CEA, in a cleaner environment where you basically don't need to use a lot of chemicals and there is like a reduced risk of diseases. And I guess the other reason can be because they are kind of prone to post-harvest damages. So it's a good idea to produce them locally in the cities where you don't need to transport them and the food waste would be lower.
So, a lot of similarities with some of our other horticultural crops that we would typically think of as growing in a greenhouse, like maybe kale, right? Which we know, it grows out here in California. A lot of people are concerned about the pesticides and chemicals, and the nutrition of the soil that we're growing it in. So similar reasons,
Yes.
but also. I think you hit it on the head probably at the first part of your answer, which is it's a high value crop,
Mainly,
right?
yes. High
Yeah.
value compared to the other leafy
Yeah.
greens and other CA crops.
I also think of strawberries too as being uniquely desirable during their off season.
Yeah, yeah,
Right? Like we
yeah.
want strawberries, chocolate dipped
Definitely, and
strawberries at
especially during
Valentine's
off
Day.
season, the high market value is like that time exactly that you actually make a profit.
Yeah, exactly. So Moeen, when describing strawberry production to other growers who might be, producing lettuce or vine crops in a greenhouse or an indoor farm, if you were to describe to them what is the same or what is uniquely different about growing strawberries compared to those other horticultural crops, right? Like how would you describe that?
So strawberries are quite unique compared to many other crops. They are perennial plants, but usually we are growing them as annuals in commercial systems. They have long day or short day or day neutral cultivars. So basically, it's their response to the day length, how they dif behave differently to the different day length. And they also reproduce both sexually, which is through their seeds, and also asexually or vegetative, which is primary through their daughter plants. So there are a lot of like differences compared to other crops that we are usually producing in CA, and shifting and managing actually the balance between these like uh, flower production or fruit production with basically runner production. It needs a lot of like management. I will probably talk about it later, but there are a lot of environmental factors that you should exactly control to encourage that plant to produce what you want.
So strawberry plants, they have both, I'm guessing like all plants, a vegetative and a generative or reproductive phase, right? So you mentioned daughter plants, and I want you to expand on that a little bit, because kind of where my brain goes when it comes to daughter plants is that the strawberries are sort of creating clones of themselves. Is that
Mhm.
true?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Awesome. So rather than us, maybe like if I thought about cannabis, for example, right? Like a lot of times they're cutting, right,
Yeah.
from a mother plant. And we're cutting clones or cutting daughters off of the mother plant, essentially. But for strawberries, they're producing their own. We don't have to necessarily go and cut parts off of the strawberry to clone that plant. They're doing it themselves.
Yes. So basically, before I go to strawberries, for example, for cannabis, what we do is that we are cutting those little like end of the stems and like those shoots to produce a clone, which, if I need to explain, it's like basically a population of plants that are genetically uniform and behave like similarly to each other. So basically, when you have a plant and when you want to propagate that plant, if you use seeds, you have genetic variation because it is from a different male and female. But when you use the vegetative parts, you can have a uniformity later. So about the strawberries, they actually produce stolons or runners, and those stolons, they produce daughter plants on their nodes. So it's different on the cultivars. Some cultivars produce more stolons. Some cultivars, they are really like, we have a problem with encouraging them to produce enough runners. So there is a lack of new planting material for the next generation of strawberries. So it's totally depending on the cultivars, but basically their architecture is like there is a mother plant, and that mother plant produce runners or stolons or flowers or both of them at the same time. There are environmental factors that encourage them to produce one more than the other one. They have a vegetative stage, and then they go to uh, a like reproductive stage in the nature.
Okay, so the strawberry plant can simultaneously produce flowers to then produce the fruit, or and they can also simultaneously produce runners to produce daughter plants.
So they usually
You
do
can suppress one or the other to force it to
that,
do.
yes, yes. So basically, based on if they are short day or long day, for example, if we have a long day cultivar and the duration of day is also long, I mean, it's more than like 13, 14 hours per day, they are mostly encouraged to produce flowers, but at the same time, they are also producing some runners. So last week, I was in California visiting some strawberry fields, and they were saying actually the cost of cutting these runners on the field is a lot.
Mm.
and they have to like go to the field like 4 or 5 times during the season, and they cut all those runners because there's a trade-off. If you want flowers and if you want fruit on the strawberry field, you don't want the plant to waste its photosynthetic material, all the like sugars to produce runners.
Mm. Interesting. So, so it's so interesting that strawberries can be short day, long day, or day neutral. Is that Is that common? I mean, it seems atypical, at least for the horticultural crops that I'm used to, right? It seems like, you're either a short day, poinsettia or cannabis plant, or you're a day neutral tomato plant, right? Or you're a long day. I actually don't know an example of a long day plant. A long day, some other plant.
Yeah.
But strawberries have evolved to thrive under all three of those conditions.
Yes, basically they have mostly short day and long day. Most of the cultivars that are known to be day neutral, actually the research recently proved that they are long day cultivars. There is only
Oh,
1 or 2 cultivars that we still think they are day neutral. But basically, Albion, Monterey, a lot of cultivars that they have been known as day neutral, now we know that they are actually long day cultivars.
interesting. So it sounds like actually one of the benefits of growing strawberries in controlled environment agriculture is managing light
Yes,
and the
yes,
photo period, not
yes,
just the quantity. Yeah.
yes, exactly. So basically, among all the environmental factors, there are two that drive those mother plants to produce either flower or like flower initiation or runner initiation. Those two are day length, basically photoperiod, or temperature, and their interaction. So when it is like a little warmer, they are like more encouraged to produce more runners. Under cooler temperature, they produce more flowers. Also, day length is based on their cultivar. If it is a long day, it is more encouraged to produce more flowers on the higher day length. If they are short day cultivar, they produce flowers and fruits on their shorter days.
I'm glad you emphasized that because or clarified that because I was curious. Is it necessarily that a short day strawberry plant is steered more towards flower production, flower and fruit production, and long day, that a longer day steers it more towards flower and fruit production? So I think you answered that question. Um, be right. So we're going to talk about lighting today, but I want to ask one more question regarding the daughter plants. So are the runners and the daughter plants, are they genetically identical? So are they clones or is there genetic variation like if they went to seed?
Mm, the other plants, they are genetically uniform and they are clone to each other. Yes.
I wonder why strawberries evolved to do that for themselves. That's so interesting.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can philosophize on that later, and maybe some of our listeners have a good idea if they're into evolutionary biology.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
not my fault, so I prefer to not talk about it.
Well, I mean, it's so unique because I think about apples a lot and their genetic diversity, right? And how like every single seed in an apple carries a different part of the genome. So that's like, so you cannot just plant, right? Like the seed from an apple that you love and expect to get the apple that you love. Like one out of 1,000 seeds is actually going to produce that apple, which is why we had, so much apple cider in the 1800s with Johnny Appleseed, just like planting all these, crab apples basically all over the United States. And so To me, it's like, okay, well, if apples are producing a bunch of crap genetics, right? It's interesting that strawberries are like, no, I'm perfect. I want to reproduce myself just as I am.
Exactly. So basically, strawberries also like it's the same with their seeds. So when you buy a fruit from grocery store, there are those little like black dots on the fruits that basically those are their seeds. So
Okay.
it's again those genetic variation on like in those seeds, and we are
Oh.
using that for breeding programs. But at the same time, as you said, the strawberries, they are like, yeah, I want to produce my own kids. I want to produce like genetic material. They do not share that genetic, those genes actually with another parent. They do, but they produce seeds. On the other plants, whatever that goes to the other plants, it's only from the mother. It's not from any like father, any dad.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, are strawberry plants like cannabis plants in that you have male and female plants, or are they both?
I'm not sure of this part.
Okay,
This is
fair.
probably one of those that honestly, it's like they do have like flowers that they have both, I guess, but like this is a question for Gino Fernandez.
All right, all right, all right, all right. Fair. We'll get him on next.
Yeah, you
All
surprised
right.
me.
All right. Well, how about we move on to what you are an expert at? So let's talk about lighting. And so we started going down the road of a photo period. And so we understand that photo period is important for, instigating flowering and fruiting in the strawberry plant. So I'm assuming you studied photo period for your research.
Yes.
Okay. So, when I think about photo period, a lot of times I think about DLI and the amount of light we're packing into a certain period of time. For strawberries, what is the ideal daylight integral for, and is it different for propagation versus flower production?
So basically, about all light characteristics, we don't have much research on propagation. Uh,
Okay.
our program is probably one of the, if it is not the first in the world, if one of the first in the world that is using, that is doing research on light for propagation. But there has been research on strawberry fruit production. There are different references, DLI around like 17 to 22, 23. It's like definitely more than crops like lettuce, but definitely less than, for example, cannabis. It's around like 17 to 22, 23 for fruit production. For propagation, because so I'm not sure if you have seen strawberry stock plants like in indoor agriculture, in indoor plants. Basically the mother plants are on the top and all the runners are hanging from the mother plants, and the height of that plant can be like 6 feet.
Wow.
So we usually provide a little more light. In my research, I've like based on different experiments that I've been doing, I've provided mostly 25, 26 mole per square meter per day. But we have done research previously in our lab by another PhD students that they actually act better with higher DLI. So they produce more other plants if you have higher DLI.
Okay, so it's super interesting that a higher DLI is encouraging the strawberry plant to produce more daughters. I guess I think that's interesting because usually when I think about our horticultural crops, that growers are typically targeting a higher DLI during the reproductive or generative phase of growth. Not always, but there are some crops out there that I see that sort of steering towards a higher DLI during that generative phase. And so it's interesting to me that at least in my experience, that's kind of flipped on its head with the strawberry plant.
So basically, during the generative phase, the mother plants are really compact. And when you provide, I don't know, like 600 micromole light intensity, the whole plant is receiving a lot.
Oh.
For the reproductive, sorry, for the daughter phase, you have the mother plants, the top applicant is under that. Uh, if your photoperiod is 12, I guess it's like 26 DLI. But all the runners, all the daughter plants, they are under like 100 micromole. They are under sometimes in my research 50 uh, micromole per square meter per second. So we provide, so because like plant has higher number of leaves, a higher leaf area index, we assume their need for input of light is higher.
Got it. That makes perfect
They
sense.
are basically way bigger plants.
When they're producing daughters than when they're more compact, when they're being
Yes.
generative.
Yeah, also their growth pattern is really unique compared to other CA crops. So, for example, when you produce tomatoes or cucumber in greenhouse, or like you produce lettuce in a vertical farm, the plant is growing upward. So you have older leaves on the bottom and younger leaves closer to the light source. In our plants, in the strawberries, the mother plant is on the top, and all the new vegetation and all the new leaves are at the bottom, and they are far from the light.
Oh.
So it's a really new like field of research, and we don't know much about plant light interaction in these crops. All the unique strawberry behaviors about like signaling effect of photoperiod, different like cultivars, short day, long day, all of those aside, even the architecture of the plant is so unique in CEA that basically sometimes we are confused. We don't know much about plant light interaction in this cultivar, in this plant, especially when you talk about propagation. When you talk about fruit production, yes, we have some research, we know some like results, but when we talk about propagation, it's totally like a unique
That is,
plant.
I didn't even think about that. That that the strawberry plant, that the mature part is on top and that the young part's on the bottom. That
Yeah,
that is so different compared to every other plant we're typically
yeah, compared
trying to
to
grow.
cannabis, compared to everything else. Yeah.
Yeah, everything else, everything else. So, in your research in studying photo periods, so I know that you studied a few different photo periods for propagation. What did you find exactly?
So basically, we had three photo periods, 12, 16, and 20 hours per day. And so we collected data on a lot of parameters, but basically the most important thing is for us the number of daughter plants per mother plant. And we realized on their shorter photo period in a strawberry cultivar Monterey, we have about 18% higher number of daughter plants. So our photo periods, basically they were under the same DLI. So with the same input of light, with the same DLI, if you provide a shorter duration, you will get more daughter plants, which means in the shorter duration, you will need to have a higher light intensity to produce to have the same DLI.
Right, right. That's one of the downsides of short day plants, right? Is that we got to pack all that light into a shorter period of time.
Yeah, it's a long day plant. So Monterey, a long day plant, which means it produces flowers in the long
Right.
day. And we don't want flowers. We want runners and we want the other plants.
So here is the
So
exact
short
opposite.
day,
Yeah, to
yeah,
propagate the runners, we want a short photo period, but the to produce or during propagation, strawberry plants also like a higher light intensity or more light packed into that shorter
yeah,
time frame.
yeah. So basically, there are
Okay.
two main factors here. One is photoperiodism. So basically, when you have a short day plant, if the day length is short, it's gonna produce flowers. If you have a long day plant, if the day length is long, it's gonna produce flowers. At the
Yeah.
same time, we have another phenomenon, which is the trade-off between runner initiation and flower initiation in the crown of strawberry plants. When you have higher flower number, you expect lower runner initiation. When you have higher runner, you expect lower. It's like a trade-off. They decide which way they want to go based on the signals from light duration and the signals from temperature and their interaction.
Would you ever expect to grow the same strawberry plant both for flower production and daughter production? Or are we really moving towards some plants being, you're a flowering, fruiting plant only, and you strawberries over here are propagation only. We want you to produce the runners and the future generation of fruiting, flowering plants.
Yeah. So if we want to make them produce both at the same time, the efficiency is really low and we won't
Hmm.
get as much flower as we want or runner. And also management is really hard in that greenhouse or vertical farm or even field that you have. So on the field, they have to cut all the runners in the fruit production fields. At the same time, when they have open field nurseries where they have all the stock plants and those stock plants produce runners, they remove all the flowers. At the
Oh,
same time, they don't want both of them.
interesting. Okay. So that sort of separation or division of labor, so to speak, already exists within field production.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
At the
And
same time,
so,
it's like
yeah.
for greenhouse too. It's like you want either fruit production or you want them for nursery for like producing new daughter plants for the next generation.
Okay. So, I feel like I could ask a million questions, just on that line of thought. But I'm sure.
Fair enough.
So, you have also studied light spectrum. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Yes. So, I mean, what are the differences between propagation and, flower producing strawberries in terms of the light spectrum that they like?
Yeah. Uh, so another research that we've done was on different light spectra. We had four light spectrum. Two of them was different ratios of red to blue. So basically, we had high blue, low red, or low blue and high red. At the same time, two other spectrum with the background spectrum of these two, but we substituted some of these spectrum with far red. So
Okay.
it was like high blue, low red, low blue, high red, and both of them with far red substitution, not adding far red, substituting far red.
Okay.
Because research showed that far reds are equally efficient in photosynthesis. So we didn't want to add the far red. And if we get better result, we don't know if that result is for like adding more photons or like changing the spectrum. So we've substituted the far red.
Okay. Um, and so what did you find?
So in that research, we realized when plants are under a higher blue ratio, so high blue and low red, they produce more flowers, which is an unwanted trait. We don't want that in our research, which is mainly focused on like producing the other plants. But when they are on their higher red and lower blue, they produce more runners and daughter plants. They produce less flowers. Substituting far red at the same time, when it was substituted with a background spectrum that already had high red, it wasn't beneficial. But when with that other spectrum, when we had higher blue light, substituting some of that spectrum with far red increased the number of daughter plants for us. Regarding flower production, both far red treatments, they increase the number of flowers, which was unwanted. It's a little like you should see the
Interesting.
graph, and yeah, it's like by explaining it, maybe it's a little hard to imagine. It's better like with the graph, and you see exactly how these numbers are different.
So, I mean, uh, far red overall, regardless of whether you added it to red or to blue, right? Increased daughter production.
Increased flower
Increased
production.
flower. Okay, so far
Uh,
red is is for flowers.
Yes,
Okay.
but when it was like I'm gonna say added because the word substituted is a little like
Yeah, yeah,
confusing
yeah.
to always use. When it was together with high blue light, it was beneficial to increase the number of daughter plants.
Interesting. Why do
Yeah.
you think that is?
So it's just like mostly signaling effect. So when you add far red plants, like there are a lot of research that they show plants produce higher uh, like flowers on their forehead. And regarding number of daughter plants, they just have a signaling of shade. They think they are under the shade of another. I think it's like and like evolution and ecology,
Yeah.
like, but based on my understanding, that mother plant feel that it's under the shade of another plant. That so they want to escape. They want to take
Oh.
runners, and those runners go like a little far from that shade, and they can reproduce. The main purpose of plants is to reproduce. You can see this in all the other plants. If you have a stress, if you have, for example, drought, you can see they suddenly go to flowering and like producing seeds, even if it's really low quality. They just want to finish their life cycle and produce the next generation to just maintain their.
So the far red is creating sort of that shade response that
Yes,
I'm going to need more light. And so I'm sort of giving up my resources to produce daughter plants that can go, right, that I can extend myself out of the shade, out of the cover of shade and into the light.
yes, yes.
That's very interesting. Were you expecting that result?
Regarding far red part, yes, but for high blue, low red, low blue, high red, we were not sure because, as I said, we did not have enough evidence from other research that they focus on the effect of light spectrum on specifically on daughter plant production. We had one other experiment, another master's student in our lab, I guess like a few years ago. And in their experiment, it wasn't different. They had like two spectrum, again, high blue, low red, low blue, high red, and two different photoperiods. And the photoperiod what was actually effective, it changed the number of the other plants, but spectrum was not.
Okay. So if you want propagation, far red will help to produce daughter plants, but if you want more flower, then a high blue light was beneficial. Did I get that right?
Yes, also Forest increased flower under both of those background spectrum. So Forest increased the number of flowers, which is unwanted for us. If among all these four light spectrum, I want to suggest one for a nursery, for like a grower who wants to produce daughter plants in a CA facility, I would suggest high red, low blue without far red.
Oh,
Why?
really? Okay.
Without far red. Why? Because the number of daughter plants produced under high red, low blue was the same as when we added far red. At the same time, adding far red, or actually substituting far red, increased the number of flowers. So like
Oh.
it allows for labor to go through that through those like systems to pick all those flowers, to cut all of those.
Interesting. Interesting. So the far red produced more daughters, but it also produced more flowers. So if we
Yes, it
really want the plant to focus its resources on daughter production, skip the far red and just do high red, low blue.
in my research on cultivar Monterey.
Monterey.
Yeah, it's like really, yeah, I can't talk about just general on the
And
cultivars.
yeah, and I think that's a really fair point, and maybe we should have brought that up sooner, is that your research was done on this one particular Monterey cultivar, and the results could be different for other cultivars.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
it
Um, but still, I mean, your research is so groundbreaking because so few, if any, researchers have studied the light interactions, right, specific to propagation. So now it's up to other researchers or maybe your future research to look at other cultivars or to prove or disprove your research, right, with additional data.
can definitely. Especially in
Maybe not
strawberry,
disprove, but yeah.
they have like different cultivars, short day, long day, and it's so much like variation.
How many different commercial cultivars are there out there? Hundreds?
Oh, a lot. Only our research group, we are working on 13 of them. There
Okay.
are European cultivars, like there are a lot of cultivars. I can't say hundreds, but like there are a lot.
I remember Mark Krogel at Ohio State showing me some of the strawberry research, and he had this one section of the greenhouse that was just for starting strawberry plants, and I don't even, and it was like in this grid, and I don't even know how many cultivars there were, but I just remember my mind being blown thinking, like, how do you keep track of all these different cultivars that you're testing? And that seemed really overwhelming to me.
Yeah.
Um, so what's next for your lighting research specifically related to this project?
So in my PhD, I followed like an A to Z. I started with photoperiod because that was the main light signaling effect that changes the trade-off between flower and runner production among all the light aspects. Then I focused on spectrum, and now I'm working on top light versus intra-canopy lighting.
Ah.
So again, to get back to architecture of these plants, during my previous research and other research that we have done in our lab, we realized the runner canopy and the daughter plant canopy. They have a high leaf area index, but they like sometimes they are on their light compensation point. For the growers, if I want to define light compensation point, is the amount of light that a plant can only survive. The plant is not productive. Under that point, the respiration of the plant would be more than photosynthesis. The plant actually is using its carbohydrate, but higher than that point, they are actually productive. It's like I don't know, you give me a donut a day and I'm just alive. I won't be productive. I won't be able to do anything. I would just make it. So that light intensity is around like 30 to 45, around this range for strawberries. And we realized we did like 3D light map in our strawberry systems, and we saw although mother plants are under, for example, 450 or 600 micromole of light, the daughter plants, they are under 20, they are under 30. So now we want to change that light distribution. Instead of
Mm.
providing all the light from the top for mother plants, we want to we do not want to give them extra light for intracanopy. We want to change the distribution. So some of the treatments they have, uh, again, like the same method that we have been using, all the light from the top, some of them, some of the light from the intracanopy, some of them, most of the light from the intracanopy. So we are changing that distribution of light among top versus intracanopy lighting.
I mean, that seems like it makes a lot of sense for strawberry propagation with what you described, where these runners could be hanging 6 feet from the bottom of the mother plant. So having that intracanopy lighting kind of follow the runners and their development seems like it makes perfect sense. I mean, I don't know
Yeah,
how that's not going
especially
to be
when
beneficial.
especially when you think all those daughter plants and runners are the actual parts that we want to sell. So we want their quality to be high. It's not just, for example, in tomato, we are selling the fruit, and the top light, we have supplemental lighting or top light in the greenhouse, but also our younger leaves are on the top. In the strawberry, not only the parts that we want to sell, they are under low light, but also those are the new leaves, the fresh
Mm.
leaves that they have usually higher photosynthetic capacity.
So what if you just put lights on the floor? Would the runners grow to the light?
So the runners, they do not grow toward the light.
Okay.
They just like, if you have gravity, they will follow that and they don't care where is your light source.
Even though the
But
mother plant put out the runner to go to the light.
no, yeah, it's like it doesn't matter for a
Okay.
strawberry where is the light. But the mother part, you produce them during the first half of the growth period. The mother part is actually the part that has the highest leaf area index.
Mm-hmm.
We usually do like 10 week, sometimes 9 weeks, sometimes in some other research we've done 12 weeks. And until week 6, we do not have a lot of leaf area index in the runner canopy. So we have to have lights on the top. That's not the part that we can just like remove that and only have light from the bottom. Because until week 6, you will just throw those photons from the like to the back of the pots, to the bottom of
Okay.
the pots, not have those runners who have leaf area index. But on the second half of the experiment, when you especially have canopy closure on the mother plants, you have really, really low light penetration through the canopy, and all the daughter plants will be on their light compensation point. Then you need to provide light for those daughter plants. So I forgot to mention this, but in my research, although we have top light intracanopy light, our intracanopy light is after first half of the experiment. We do not have that intracanopy light during the first half because it doesn't make sense. We don't want to just waste our photons.
You need a mother plant in order, a healthy, robust mother plant in order to support the generation of those daughter plants.
Definitely.
And you're saying it takes
Also,
about,
yeah, you go. Yeah.
I was just going to say, and you said that takes about 6 weeks, 6 to 10 weeks in order to produce that healthy mother plant.
9 week, 10 week, or 12 week, like
Okay.
different research that we've been doing.
Okay. I have a question that just popped into my head. So you talked about runners and daughter plants. Are those interchangeable terms? Is the runner the daughter plant, or are there daughters on each runner?
So there are two terms for runner. So those stems that they come out of the crown, those they are called either runner or stolen.
Okay.
I should have probably mentioned this at the beginning of
And
the
I should have
interview.
asked that at the beginning too.
Okay. But so in the industry, usually they call them runners.
Okay.
In academia, in like scientific papers, we usually call them stolons. So those stems, those runners, they produce again like secondary runners, sometimes tertiary runners. Like each runner, again on that runner, it produces another stem, another runner, or another stolon. So the word runner and stolen is like interchangeably used. They are
Got it.
synonyms. At the same time, in the industry, for example, you probably have heard in California, they call runner tips. Runner
Mm-hmm.
tips are daughter plants that we call. We usually call them daughter plant. In like growers, usually they call them runner tips or just tips
Okay. And so the daughter plant is produced from the runner, basically.
from the runner. Yeah, yeah, on the node usually.
Okay. And so then in if I just thought about nature, if we just let the strawberry plant grow, right, as it naturally would do, then that stolen would develop, the runner would run out of the shade, and then at the end of that runner, at the tip, you would then have the receptacle or something would grow out of that that would then root itself into the ground and then grow into a strawberry plant.
So you have runner that comes out of the crown. And for example, in cultivar Monterey, in every other node, it produces a daughter plant.
On
So
the runner.
on the runner,
Oh,
on the
wow,
node,
that got it.
yeah. So my plants, they produce like 6 to 12. And the first runner that comes out, you see a dog plant on their first node, another plant usually on their third node. But at the same time, on the first node, you also have another stolon, another runner coming from that node. So you see, oh, this runner has a secondary runner, and that secondary runner also has a tertiary runner. So the architecture of these plants are also very unique. A part of the research that I did, I looked into how many of these daughter plants are on primary runners, which we call them primary daughter plants. How many of them, or what proportion of them, are on secondary runners, which we call them secondary daughter plants, and also tertiary daughter plants.
Okay. Wow. So we have a stolen, it's a runner. It has multiple nodes on it, and at every node you can have a daughter plant. But then you can
In
also
Monterey,
say that again.
in cultivar Monterey that I'm working on, it's every other node. So in one node, we have the other plant. The other node is like blind. It's just doesn't have anything. And the other node, again, we have another daughter plant. I'm not sure about all the cultivars that are out there.
Okay. Okay, got it. And so you said that with your cultivar with Monterey and your research, you were producing somewhere between 6 and 12 nodes on each runner.
It's stolen. No, no,
12
12 runners.
12
Yeah, somewhere
runners
between.
off of each mother plant.
Yeah, yeah,
Got it. Okay. And so then you have a runner, and then every other node has a daughter plant on it. And
yeah,
then not the in between node, but off the daughter plant itself, it might produce another runner.
yeah. The primary runner also
Has a
produces
secondary run.
a secondary runner, and sometimes on that secondary runner we have a tertiary runner.
Okay, got it. So, uh, in your research, when you're looking at propagation and you're looking at the number of daughters that are produced, you're looking at not just the daughters produced on the primary runner, but also the secondary and tertiary runners.
Yes, yes.
And is it, I mean, I guess my gut tells me that the daughters that are grown off of the primary runner would be more energetic than the daughters produced off of a secondary or tertiary runner. Is that necessarily true?
The older the age of the daughter plant, they are usually bigger. So when you have a strawberry mother plant, the first stolon that comes out of that plant and the first daughter plant that we have on that first stolon, that is a big daughter plant at the end of the growth period. At the end of that stolon, even on the primary, we have really, really small daughter plants. At the same time, you can see a tertiary runner on that same stolon, but that tertiary, if you look at like up that tertiary runner, the daughter plant would be bigger than the daughter plant that is at the end of primary stolon. So it's not just in average, yes, primary daughter plants are bigger than secondary in average, and secondary is bigger than tertiary. But it depends on where that daughter plant is located on that stolon. The closer they are to the mother plant and the older they are also bigger.
Got it. Wow. Okay, so I mean, when thinking about the goals of your research in terms of propagation and, the inducement, right? Using photoperiodism to induce runner production and daughter production, and then, the DLI to support daughter production and the spectrum to also, steer the plant towards more daughter production. And now you're going to look at the delivery of light to those runner production. Are you just looking at the total number of daughter plants that are produced, or are you also interested in the quality of that daughter plant, like the vigor or the
Yeah,
viability of that daughter plant?
definitely. We are looking into several morphological parameters. Some of them we are looking into quality of the other plants. We look their chlorophyll index. We look into their leaf area, their crown diameter, their petiole length, because petiole length is a sign of shade avoidance response.
Mm.
For example, when they are under low light, they will have longer petioles. And there are a lot of growth and ecological parameters on the daughter plants that we always look into to classify how vigor they are, how uh, their size are different. We categorize them based on their ground diameter in different size categories. There are a lot in every uh, data collection that we work on.
So right now you're just looking at quantity, not necessarily quality. Is that true?
We do look at quality too. All these parameters that I mentioned, like
Okay.
chlorophyll index, their petiole length, their leaf area, these are all quality parameters.
So, I mean, can we pick on one? Could we say like that the spectrum study you did, the far red versus blue. So you had mentioned, right, like you would recommend nursery producers use high red and low blue because you produce the same number of daughter plants without producing also a lot of flower plants. Does that also mean that those daughter plants are more vigorous because they're not competing for resources with the flowers that were produced under far red?
Not necessarily. In my spectrum experiment, the daughter plants in all the spectrum, they were more than average quality that we wanted. They were mostly high quality. However, if I want to just like make an example, in another research that we were working on plant density, we had plant density that is used right now in CEA facility, and 9 plant per square meter, and we also increased these plant densities to see until what threshold we do not see negative impact on the quality. And after 13.5 mother plant per square meter, we saw the negative impact of density and those competition for light on the daughter plants.
And so those plants aren't competing for nutrients or anything. They're all on their own system. So it would be light then that would be
It's
that they're
fully
competing
light.
for.
Yes, we have done a 3D light map and it's completely competing for light.
So what do growers want when it comes to a mother plant? Are they looking for, I mean, I guess the way to put it is if you have these daughter plants that you have big ones at the base or near the mother plant, right? Versus the ones, further down the line, at the tip of the runner, or even secondary, tertiary. Do do we necessarily want the bigger daughter plant, or the bigger plant that produces from what am I trying? You know what I'm trying to say, right? Do, uh,
Yeah,
do
yeah.
we want a small daughter
The
plant
most,
or do we want a big daughter plant when we're gonna actually
the
produce it
most,
for flowers?
yeah, the most important thing that growers want is uniformity. So they want, if they are receiving a box of daughter plants, to be uniform. Usually, the first one or two daughter plant of those mother plants, the ones on the first installment, they are too big. They have a massive crown diameter. They are too big. Also, the ones at the end of the stolons, they are too small. So we usually do not count these two. And after that, the other daughter plants, they are like different size categories. So we can categorize them based on their crown diameter or based on their leaf area, because usually we do based on crown diameter, but leaf area and fresh mass also have a high correlation with crown diameter. So we can also use those and categorize them and just ship them based on their size.
Got it. Okay. Uniformity. That's always the key to any agricultural production, right? Got it. Okay. Okay. So not the ones closest to the mother, not the ones furthest from the mother, but the ones in between. The middle children tend to be the
Yeah.
most uniform. You don't want any bossy older daughters or any, I don't know, needy young
I'm
daughters.
laughing because I'm the first child, so that, that's probably they shipped me to the US. They were like, we don't want you back home. Oh,
And I'm a bossy older sister, so I know how that I know
gosh.
I can play that role. So I just wanted to touch a little bit about the greater project that the USDA is funding because wow, when you go to the website that NC State hosts for this research, there are a lot of universities and research institutions participating in this research. I mean, this is not like four or five or six. There, I mean, it fills the page, the logos that are representing the different academic and research institutions studying strawberry propagation. Can you just kind of just touch on what other researchers are studying and how this is all supposed to come together in the end?
Yeah, so I'm so happy that I'm working in such a big grant on such a big group. We have researchers from, I guess, 11 universities and institutes, and they are working on their six different objectives of the grant. I'm on objective one. So some of us on objective one, we are working on mother plant responses to the environment. For example, to light characteristics, to temperature, chilling, CO2, different nutrient solutions, like these kind of things. Some of researchers, they are working on establishing protocols for like transplant establishment, those transplants, I mean daughter plants. So daughter plant establishments, conditioning, daughter plant storage, they are working on these kind of things. We have a genetic team that they are doing phenotyping, they are working on genetic of these strawberries. We have an economic team that they are doing different economic analysis. We have industry partners, and also we have an extension and outreach team.
There's a lot of team members.
Yeah, it's a lot, and we have like annual. So this team we call it PIPCAP. PIP stands for Precise Indoor Propagation. And every year we come together. Last week it was our annual meeting in Cal Poly, California, and all the researchers from different objectives of the grant, they come together, they work on, they talk about their updates, what they've been doing during the past year.
You know, I just so you know, I've already forwarded the website that you sent me to several of my clients and colleagues in
Awesome.
strawberry production, giving them a heads up, and they actually didn't know about it. So I'm happy to do this podcast and get the word out on this groundbreaking research you guys are doing. And it just seems like there's so much opportunity, not just for research, but also, utilizing the research to produce a better strawberry plant. And to me, this is a perfect example of how CEA can be used as a tool even to support field producers, right? If you can produce under a controlled environment with managing all these different environmental parameters, figuring that out, and we can produce a more uniform, high quality daughter plant, right? So that then it can be planted in a greenhouse or in a vertical farm, but also in a field, even here potentially in Monterey County and in Salinas and our neck of the woods.
I was there last week. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's really exciting, and I think that there's a lot of field strawberry producers who are looking for more and better daughter plants and sources of stock plants, right? To grow. So
Right now on the field production, on the open field nurseries, the efficiency is unfortunately not really high, and they produce around 15 to 25 daughter plant per mother plant. In CA, when you produce mother plants like vertically, when you have runners hanging from the mother plants, we are producing between like 40 to 120 daughter plants per mother plant in different research, in different like
wow.
experiments. And because like when you think about it, it's on open field, you have a mother plant and the runners should go horizontally. On the CEA, runners are hanging from the mother plants. Going horizontally on the field, you have a lower planting density because you
Mm.
have to have a space for those runners to grow. And also you have a really high labor demand. They like we are talking about hundreds of acres of nursery, and workers, they have to go to the field, they have to pin all those daughter plants to the ground. So when those runners like move on the surface of the soil, hundreds of labor, hundreds of workers, they have to go and they have to stick them to the ground to root. Also, at the end of the production period, you have like machinery that they go to the nursery, they dig all those daughter plants from the soil, and those daughter plants, they touch the soil during their whole life cycle. And we have the like potential of like diseases, soil-borne diseases. Again, I wish I was talking about this at the beginning of the interview, because this is the whole purpose of this research. There are a lot of challenges on open field strawberry nurseries, like high labor demand, risk of diseases, I don't know, high water consumption, lower plant density, lower efficiency, like fumigation regulation. In the
Mm.
future, they're not going to allow us to use methyl bromide for strawberry nurseries, and it will have like it will really challenge the strawberry nursery industry. So for all of those reasons, we have to bring those mother plants inside, when like where they do not touch the soil, where the environment is like the whole place is clean, and the plant density is higher because all the runners are hanging from the mother plants. You don't need to give them a space for the runners to grow horizontally. And there is like lower need for pesticide application on all of these. So this was the whole purpose, that we were like thinking of bringing those mother plants inside. And when you bring a plant inside, what is the first environmental factor that you don't have? Natural light. It's like it's the first thing that you should figure out, that like, okay, what light should I provide for these plants? And that's why I'm working on different light aspects to see which one works better.
Do you think there's a particular advantage of growing daughter plants in a fully enclosed indoor electric lighting facility as opposed to in a greenhouse?
So both greenhouse and those like kind of growth chamber that you just recalled, we call them CEA. Compared to greenhouse, growth chambers can be even more like controlled. Like the temperature, CO2, everything, we can control them even better than greenhouse. However, in the greenhouse, you have the advantage of using natural sunlight. And if you need, you can like provide supplemental lighting.
I mean, of course, one of with my background in climate management, I'm very interested also in the limitations of temperature and humidity, as well as and that interaction with lighting. You said that photo period and temperature were two of the primary factors that affect whether a strawberry plant is propagative or generative, I guess.
Yeah.
Can you shed any light, no pun intended, on how temperature affects propagation? Like, does it like high temperature, low temperature, like relative to the generative strawberry plant?
So when you have that photoperiodism and plants look into the day length to behave, when the temperature is warm, that warm temperature override photoperiodism.
Oh,
So
really?
yes, so basically when it is warm, the plant is more encouraged to produce runners, not flowers. So in my research, you might think why I worked on photoperiod for a long day cultivar. It's obvious, it's a long day cultivar, and it's gonna produce lower number of flowers on their longer photoperiod. Why did I do research on it? Because we already knew about this effect of warm temperature, and changing the temperature is way easier than like changing the photoperiod under a same DLI. When I say changing photoperiod under the same DLI, I mean providing way more light intensity. You have to have higher number of LED lights. So we changed the temperature. Changing temperature is easy to higher temperature. So usually, like you say, strawberry mother plants, their reaction to photoperiod, we are talking about intermediate temperatures, about 15 to 18 degrees centigrade. We increased it to 26, which is, I guess, for American growers, it's around 78 or
78.
79. Yeah, I guess it's around that
Yep.
Fahrenheit. So we said, okay, we don't want flowers, we want more runners. If higher temperature encourage these mother plants to produce more runners, we're not gonna buy more LED lights to just have more runners. We're gonna just increase the temperature. But that higher temperature also has an interaction with photoperiod. So we wanted to see under higher temperature, which they're gonna produce more runners, if that has an interaction with different photoperiod. And our first hypothesis was that no, it's already higher temperature. The number of daughter plants and number of stolons per plant is gonna be similar under all these photoperiods, but it wasn't. So our experiment actually rejected our own first hypothesis. And we saw, although plants are being produced under high temperature, their flower production didn't change. So basically, we hypothesized that
Oh.
they will produce the same number of flowers, and because the flower production and runner production they have a trade-off, they're gonna produce the same number of runners and the same number of daughter plants. But the first part of our hypothesis was like confirmed. They did not change their flower production, but they did change their daughter plant production. We had higher number of daughter plant under shorter photoperiod.
So actually kind of similar results to your far red experiments, where far red increased daughter plants, but it also had a high number of flowers.
Yes, yes.
So strawberries like
They are really
heat.
complicated. They are really complicated.
I mean, it just sounds like they like heat in general, right? Like if I think about far red, that's kind of a longer wave radiation, right? It's almost like you're getting to, radiant heat where, and then like temperature is heat, right? And, right. Convective heat. So to me, it seems like strawberries thrive under heat. They like warm. They like to be warm.
If you want flower and fruit production, no. They want around 15, like that intermediate temperature to produce flowers. In our research, which our purpose is to produce runners and daughter plants, warmer temperature give them that signaling to produce those more runners.
Interesting. Did it matter? Because I know that strawberries, they really like, at least flowering, which is what I'm more familiar with, that they like a low nighttime temperature, right? Relative to other horticultural crops, right? Like 55 degrees Fahrenheit. But then they like a higher daytime temperature for fruiting crops. Do you see the same trend for propagating strawberries? Or is the diff
So
much less?
that higher day temperature and lower night temperature, it helps them with saving their carbohydrate reserves. So if you have a higher nighttime temperature, they gonna do more respiration and like they're gonna burn those carbohydrates that they made through photosynthesis during the day. However, in our research, we did that and we were like, okay, we're gonna so we needed to have an average daily temperature of around 26 because we wanted more runners, right?
Okay.
So at first, I was doing higher daily temperature, lower night, and I mean like around 29, 28 day temperature and around 22, 23, something around that for night. And we saw a lot of tip burn. And then
Oh,
we changed that, and now we have 26 day night temperature, the same, or like in some of my experiments, 26, 25, and plants are doing well. The leaf tip burn is not there anymore. And so in a strawberry, if the bigger leaves, they transpire a lot under warmer temperature, calcium will not go to the small leaves in the crown. So in a strawberry, you don't want a higher temperature and a lot of transpiration from those bigger leaves. You don't even want a lot of air velocity. So I even had vertical airflow for some of my strawberries, and the tip burn was even worse in that. I've
wow.
done research on lettuce tip burn this past summer in University of Delaware in their CA facility, and we worked on vertical airflow, and it was amazing for lettuce for preventing tip burn. For a strawberry, it doesn't help. For a strawberry, if you have higher transpiration from older leaves, your little leaves inside the crown, they won't get any calcium. And also,
Interesting.
if your VPD is high, they will again show tip burn.
Yeah.
You want higher air humidity, especially during the night, so they don't get that tip burn.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, it's so interesting how
Yes,
different all these crops
strawberry,
are.
like whenever we come together in our so beside that annual PIP meeting that all six objectives we come together every year, every month our objective one group we have like a Zoom call, and every month we are like these plants are really I don't know what word I should use. You know better.
Unique.
Unique, yeah, they're special.
I mean, it's so counterintuitive. I mean, all the research and all the practical knowledge around airflow, vertical airflow onto lettuce. I mean, we've known for right? Like 25 years since, some of the
Yeah,
Japanese researchers first studied that and figured out, oh, yeah, we reduce leaf tip burn if we blow air down on the lettuce plant. And then you do the same thing with strawberries, and they're like, oh, no, I'm so sensitive. That's too much.
yeah, yeah. And also, it's like totally different between cultivars. Like you
Mm.
produce, say, Albion is different, and you go to Fronteras and you say, "Oh my God, it's like totally different." It's yeah, like I'm having so much like having a hard time just like keeping them alive. It's
You're
just
right.
yeah, it's like so much different between the cultivars among the cultivars.
It just as a kind of a lingering question in the back of my mind has been, why the Monterey cultivar? Is it the most common cultivar? Is there something special about it?
Yeah, so this is one of the most common cultivars. It's like so after like Albion, this is the cultivar that is widely cultivated in the US. Some people say it's gonna like be number one in the future. Also, I started photoperiod experiment with long day cultivar because we already have a lot of knowledge on short day cultivar and their response to photoperiod. We
Okay.
did not know much about long day cultivars and especially their response for daughter plant production. We knew a lot about the response of generally strawberry to photoperiod regarding fruit production, not about daughter plant production. And Monterey, again, on the long day side, we did not have much knowledge on that.
So you said that, I mean, we know a lot about short day. The future people think is, this Monterey cultivar, which is a long day plant. Is there a reason why a long day strawberry plant might be more advantageous than, our current short day
So
stock?
in CA, you want to have a like so we call long day also everbearing. So you want to have a crop that you can produce strawberries throughout the year. You want to get as much as you can from that plant. And you can just plant them from today and like until next year they're gonna produce. There are some like gaps, there are some peaks and valleys in their production, but you will have a better fruit production throughout the year.
You're not just harvesting one or two times
Yeah,
and then
like
cutting and running.
June
Yeah.
bearing cultivars or short day cultivars, you're gonna harvest that time.
Yeah.
And
It
yeah,
seems like that trend is also occurring within field production. I feel like there's more and more ever-bearing crops that we're seeing in the field. And I actually, one of the most interesting things I realize about strawberries is that they can be ever-bearing. I thought, I'm from California, of course, very spoiled by the produce that we have access to here, but I always thought of strawberries as like, a month of May sort of crop, right? Naturally. And but as I've learned is that, the strawberries that are on the shelf year round, they're not necessarily coming from Mexico or from other places. Like we are still able to produce those same strawberries here in California.
it
Um,
it depends on cultivar again. Around
yeah.
May, June, around that time, usually short day cultivars are in the market, and then there are like everbearing cultivars. I'm not sure about like what short day cultivars are produced in California, but I know that yeah, it depends on short day, long day, and also it depends on the environment. Like even in California or even in the US, we have different regions that they can like, and also the system that they are using. So last week in California, they were saying that they are using high tunnel and they
Mm-hmm.
extend their growth period by like 3 months. So strawberries that
Wow.
usually are like out of the season, now with just that tunnel, they are extending by 3 months.
And I'm assuming that's by keeping the temperature elevated. So yeah, yeah, so they'll continue to flower. Moeen, this has been an amazing conversation.
Yeah, thank you
And
so much.
To all of our listeners, we had a little bit of a glitch in both of our connections. So we were sort of stumbling through that, but we seem to have figured it out here at the second half. So that's good. So I want to end, Moeen, with a question I ask all my guests, which is, what do plants crave?
I want to say they crave light.
Fair enough. I would have been surprised if you said anything else. It's true. All right. So now I'm actually gonna end now with just a few quick rapid fire questions. And so they're just meant to be, one word, one sentence answers. If you want to expand on anything, please feel free to. But just the first thought that comes to your head is what I'm looking for. All right. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. All right. Are plants introverts or extroverts?
I guess they are extroverts.
Okay. What have you learned from plants?
I've learned I can uh, change my habits based on the environment. I can shift based on the environmental signals. How can I behave and survive?
Interesting. That's a really good answer. What is the biggest misconception people have about strawberries?
So I guess the biggest misconception right now is that they think strawberries that they don't taste the way that they want them to taste, they are produced probably in the greenhouse. They're like they go to grocery store and they have a strawberry and they see, okay, this strawberry doesn't taste the same, and they're like they think either it's like a genetically modified or something, or it has something to do with like greenhouse production. But unfortunately, in the US, we do not have cultivar name and region of production name on the strawberries.
Hmm.
And strawberries are not like apples that you go and you can easily like see, okay, this cultivar and this cultivar, you even without the name, you can like distinguish them. You can realize and you can buy the same apple that you like.
Yeah.
Time that you go to a grocery store, they just sell you a strawberry. They don't sell you Monterey, Albion, Chandler, I don't know, Fronteras. And they don't mention that this Albion is from Mexico or from California. And they taste different. The taste of different cultivars are different. So mostly that
Hmm.
difference in taste is because of the difference in cultivar, not because it's just produced in greenhouse or in open field.
So, do you think that there's a branding or marketing opportunity by actually naming the cultivar, like we do with an
I've
apple?
I've heard they are named in Europe and in Southeast Asia, but this was actually one of the topic of discussion last week in our meeting, and I heard that they just want people to buy strawberries, not to buy Albion or Monterey.
Okay.
Because when you go to grocery store and they don't have Albion, you're not gonna.
Oh,
So it's
not
just
until they're
I,
as
I
abundant as apples, I guess.
yeah,
Yeah.
I prefer that they provide that information, and it's, I guess, customers' right to know what exactly cultivar they're buying. If I prefer the taste of Chandler over Monterey, let me buy Chandler. But it's like it's also a consumerism. Like people go to the grocery store, and that grocery store, if it doesn't have Chandler, they won't buy a strawberry. It's like a trade-off.
Right. And rather than naming it for what it is, what we have instead is organic or not organic, right? Or
Yeah,
it's not labeled at all. So those are two choices. Or maybe you see something that's like uh sweetest strawberries or I don't know, creek grown strawberries, right? Like and so like
yeah,
then there's like you're now being led down a almost an emotional path rather than just like this calling it what it is
yeah.
in a way, right? Yeah.
At least if we didn't want to provide the exact cultivar name, at least I wish there was like based on their sweetness and their acidity. So
Mm.
we are analyzing them in our post-harvest labs for like TSS, for acidity, for all of those. I wish there was like I don't know, like a categorization that people could see, okay, my taste is like I like more like acidity. The other one, like some people like more like sugary, some sweeter strawberries. That at least
Yeah.
this information was provided in the uh, on the boxes.
And apples are a great analogy to that because at our grocery store, it says not just like what, the cultivar is, but it'll say what the level of sweetness is for each of those.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And then we have recipes on how to cook with different or prepare different types of tomatoes or apples or, whatever uh produce that we're buying, right? And knowing how to use those things even differently. So I think that's fair. I also think it's interesting that you brought up GMO strawberries and the concern around that because my guess is that most people's perception of what a strawberry should taste like is probably from artificially flavored candy. So maybe we need to wipe that slate clean and talk about what a real strawberry tastes like.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Next question. What do you think we should be growing in CEA that we aren't currently growing?
Huh. Those are really hard questions. I guess in the future, one area that CEA can be really beneficial for is speed breeding. So, for example, for the speed breeding of like soybean, right now we are doing soybean speed breeding. It's not like I don't mean commercially for people. I mean like how to shorten the life cycle of that plant to do those breeding instead of like you go to the field, you plant a soybean, and you have to wait until next year. In CEA, we are doing like several generations in a year or like in 2 years. So speed breeding is like one of the areas that I guess CEA would be really beneficial for. Recently, there are like regarding the crop, actually, the main question that you asked. Uh, I've seen research on other berries and some industry, like some company just like stepping in to produce like blackberries, raspberries, like these kind of crops. I'm not sure how like it will turn out.
The long cane
Yes.
berry, right? Yeah. Is there
Yeah, and also
yeah. No, go ahead.
yeah, and also a lot of herbs.
Yeah.
With herbs, you want more secondary metabolites, and in CA, you can give those signals to the plants to produce those secondary metabolites to make those herbs more flavorful. And like that's another area that CA, I guess, will be really helpful.
Absolutely. I agree. All right, last question. All right. Kubita or Juja kebab? I'm hungry. I know what my answer is, but I'm curious what yours is.
I so whenever I go to a restaurant, I usually pick like both of them. One is
Oh,
curiosity
yes. Good
or one
answer.
ginger.
Good answer.
But yeah,
That's the best answer. One of each. Perfect.
I'm surprised that you didn't share like this on it.
I want some Kubita right now.
Yeah, yes,
Well,
definitely.
Moeen, thank
So
you
good
so
news for
much.
you. So thank you. But good news for you. There are a lot of Persian restaurants in California.
Yes, there
The
are. I
highest
know.
population of Persians are living in California, so you can
Oh,
easily
really?
find restaurants, Persian restaurants. Yeah, yeah. They are all
I,
in California, basically.
oh, yeah, that figures. Well, come back, come to Sacramento and visit me, and I'll take you to one.
Of course, I would be happy to.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the enlightening conversation. I had to throw in another pun.
Thank you so so much for having me. Yeah, it was like great to talk to you. It was a great opportunity. I was happy. I'm happy so much to talk to you about these, and I hope to see you in the next conferences or meetings in the future.
I'm sure we will. And yeah, thank you for the good work. I'm excited to get this knowledge out there, and I think this is going to help the industry, the strawberry industry at large. So this is really exciting.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right.
Yeah, have a good day.
Thanks. You too.